Hey, welcome to Let's Talk, where all we do is talk, but really it's how you talk that matters. And here's how it goes. We find an issue that most people would find interesting, and we talk about it. But we don't just give you that. We give you someone that you'd want to hear, someone that you'd say, man, I wonder what he thinks. I wonder what she thinks. And then we talk about it. And so it's very informal. It's very in the moment. It's very like off the cuff. But we don't just stop there. We talk here, so you talk there. This is meant for groups to take and then have a further discussion with it, disagree with it, whatever you need to do, but talk it out. And so we give you a bunch of talking points, and then we kind of slather the top with scripture. And we say, look, we want God to speak into all of this. And so the whole thing just becomes a beautiful thing. So today, we've got this issue for you. The question that we're going to be tackling today is, should Christians watch bad shows? I mean, there are a spate of shows on Netflix and Hulu that sound really cool, and then you go and click them on, and you're like, whoa, I didn't know it had all that in there. And so there are some unsavory elements that, you know, if like your girlfriend or your wife walked in the room, they'd be like, what are you watching? And so that's why we're calling them bad shows. Shows like Game of Thrones that have some amazing storylines, but then all of a sudden something comes on screen, you're like, wait, where's the remote? Or Breaking Bad or Schitt's Creek. And basically we're trying to wrestle through this from a perspective like in Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. It talks about things that we should be fixing our eyes on. And so basically it says in verse 8, and now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true, what is honorable, what is right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about these things that are excellent and worthy of praise. This is a tough thing to figure out. What is just entertainment? And what crosses the line to something that Christians just shouldn't be involving themselves in? So I've invited Matt Goss to join us today. He's the worship pastor here at LCBC. And man, Matt, first of all, I want to thank you for being here. First thing I want to ask you is, how long have you been at LCBC? I mean, has it been like 30 years, 40 years?
Well, I'm 45.
Nice.
So it's not been 40 years.
Okay.
I don't even think the church is 40 years old.
That's true.
So
I was just throwing it out there.
yeah, that's good. No, I did follow a girl here back in 95.
Who is she?
She's actually my wife.
Oh, nice.
Kim, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we started dating in 95, and Kim had made this her church home. So we started attending in 95, got married in 96. We're attending here for a little bit. I did take a job at another church for about 2 years, but we kept sneaking back to LCBC because we loved it here. Mm-hmm. But I joined the staff in 99.
Oh, wow. Wow, so you've been here 99, carry the one, like 22 years?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Does it feel long? Does it?
I feel old.
Do you?
Yeah,
Are you
times.
serious?
Yeah, totally.
Tell me what old feels like. What do you mean?
It just, everything hurts. Yeah. I'm at my maximum weight at this point.
Your maximum weight.
Yeah, like.
Do you mind telling us what your maximum weight is?
My maximum. Can I say it in kilos?
Yeah, tell us in kilos.
I don't know.
All right,
Yeah.
So metric system's always helpful. I always say, you know, with age and stuff like that, it sounds so much better in Spanish. So you can say like you're 45, or you can say you're 45.
That sounds way better.
Doesn't it? Yeah, so
Yeah.
very good. So I wanted to talk with you today because I know you're a movie buff, or at least you enjoy good movies.
Yeah, I enjoy good movies.
Yeah. What's your favorite movie?
That's a tough one. I would probably, I'll say, like, my favorite movie was probably Tombstone.
Okay. And what is that?
It's a Western.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know.
You gotta watch it.
I do. I thought it was a pizza. I didn't know.
It is also a pizza.
Okay.
And it's not my favorite pizza.
Really?
No.
Manco's Pizza.
No.
No. All right. So Tombstone is an old movie?
Yeah, it's an older movie.
Okay. Well, I figured because you're 45, it's got to be an old movie.
Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer.
I got to watch it now. Now, let's take it into like the 21st century. What's your favorite Netflix show or your Hulu show? Or I don't know. What do you go? Hulu, Roku, whatever?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're all of them.
Okay.
Because we'll watch, yeah. So my
Disney
favorite.
Disney Plus?
We are Disney Plus as well, yes. We are, what are we watching on that? Agent Carter. We just started watching Agent Carter, which is a good one. I would suggest Agent Carter.
Okay.
We are watching Cobra Kai.
Oh, okay. Never seen it. I heard it's good though.
It is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, this is what we're going to get into today.
Exactly.
It's good, because you paused, didn't you?
I did.
You paused.
Yeah.
You're like, it is good.
It is good. Yes.
So yeah, I'm not a real big on like watching shows and stuff like that. I watched on Netflix Designated Survivor. I didn't get through all of that, but I thought it was a really cool premise. I don't know if you've seen that.
I didn't.
Guy who's like the secretary of the housing and urban development or something, really low on the totem pole. He is at one point, he's locked away somewhere, taking his turn as a designated survivor in case somebody kills the president, which is like stupid. He's never going to be in succession. But someone blows up the entire Capitol, and so everybody's gone all the way down to him, so he becomes the president. And how would he do it? So it's a really interesting show.
That sounds like Johnny English.
My second favorite.
That's how he became a spy.
My second favorite is a show called Alone, and it's on.
I love Alone.
Yeah, and what's it on? It's on Amazon, where they drop them off
In the middle of nowhere. The Arctic one we just watched, that was ridiculous.
It's crazy. Like, what are these people are crazy.
They are crazy.
Those are like my two things. And so what I wrestle with is sometimes I'm watching Alone, and they bleep out if the person's like, oh, crud, and they say something. But man, I don't know about you, but I have 3 kids. Okay, you have like 19, right?
I do.
Yeah, so I always have the filter on, of like if something's on, and my kids are like 21, 19, and 15, okay? And if somebody swears, I'm like, oh, sorry, I'm reaching for the remote, or like I wanna hit like the pause button or whatever. And they're like, Dad, I've heard that word before, but I still feel that, like I don't wanna pick movies that have a lot of junk in them. So I don't know, do you struggle with that? Like what goes on TV, what's not on TV?
That is definitely a conversation in our house. And trying to get us to all agree on a movie is like the most impossible thing. So I think we flick for about an hour and a half, and we could have watched a pretty good movie in that time, but we end up flicking the whole time just because we're trying to find something that isn't too rough content-wise, something that is going to be enough of a storyline to draw the whole family in. But our age span is 20.
I was going to say.
20 down to 3.
Yeah.
So that's impossible.
Yeah.
It's been impossible for a long time to find something that
Do you
works
have
for all
like
of us.
2 zones of movie night? Like there's a zone up till 8 p.m. where we're all going to watch Mulan.
Yeah, it's more that we like watch. We start it. We tend to lean younger, so we'll pick the movie that will fit the youngest demographic, and then the older kids just leave and go up and watch whatever they want to watch on Netflix
But
or
isn't
on
that
their
sad?
phones. It's terrible. I hate it.
It makes you feel like, no, come back.
And sometimes I'm like, do you guys realize the crap that I've had to watch for you over the years? Can you just endure this hour and a half? Like,
Do you say that?
I do. Yes,
And what do they
absolutely.
say?
They don't care.
It just goes.
Yeah, they don't care. They're like, I don't want to. That's the difference. Like, I grew up in a generation, our generation was like, if you don't want to do it, it doesn't matter. Like, I didn't pick what we watched on TV growing up.
Oh yeah.
watched-
you bring up a good point. Yeah.
I watched whatever my dad was watching.
Yeah. It's just on.
It's whatever was on.
Yeah,
You know what I
totally.
mean? Like, we watched whatever he was watching.
Because you had like 2 other options,
That's true.
and then maybe there were another 2 options, but they're all fuzzy.
So also, I grew up in a little more of a legalistic kind of upbringing. For those that don't know what that means, it's more about the rules and regulations, not so much about relationship with Jesus. I mean, I had a relationship with Jesus, but I worried about my relationship with God. I was afraid that I wasn't going to please Him, that He was constantly looking for me to mess up. I think I accepted Christ like dozens of times as a kid. Like almost every night I would pray the salvation prayer just to make sure I wasn't going to be in trouble.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mess up again.
But like I wasn't allowed to go to the movies early on. Like we weren't. I mean, so we didn't have cable and that sort of stuff back then. And
What was your favorite movie as a kid?
I remember we did have like we had a black and white TV. You know,
Same here.
and we would have to dial it in. Yeah, exactly.
And then the second dial was like. Brrrr.
Yeah, so it's come a long way for sure. So what's interesting is like
I gotta ask you this question.
Yeah.
Were you the remote control?
Yes.
Matt, get up and change the channel.
That was how the channel changed. Yes. So I mean, and back then there wasn't, like you said, there wasn't much to watch. I do remember watching like old comedies, like Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, and that kind of humor, or like the Three Stooges.
Is that why you like Tombstone?
Yeah. Right. but like, so I think it was after my parents' divorce when like kind of our Christian bubble was burst. All of a sudden it was kind of like, well, now what? You know? So then all of a sudden, all that stuff I didn't do before, now I can go to movies. Now I can do this. Now I can watch. Like, so, but I think in the back of my mind, like that was always there, that kind of, well, I shouldn't be watching this or I shouldn't be, you know what I mean?
Yeah, which gets to the point of like why we want to have this discussion, and I think we're going to step on some toes. Okay, we just got to say it at the beginning here is that it's gonna offend some people, or it's going to make people go like, wait, I totally disagree with that. But that's why we do this, because we want to talk about it here, so you talk about it there. You got to figure it out for yourself. And then the last thing we want to do today is to develop a list of these are acceptable and these are unacceptable. But I got to ask the question: so what constitutes a good movie or a bad movie? What makes a movie or a show or a Netflix series that a Christian should watch or shouldn't watch? Go.
Yeah. Good luck. You know, I think a lot of it's a tough conversation because I think we do live in an age where truth is relative. You know, people don't like absolute truth. They say, what's your truth or what's my truth? So what's acceptable for you isn't acceptable for me, or what's acceptable for me isn't acceptable for you. Well, that's kind of not true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
Like
absolutely not true.
Yeah, exactly. So the
Because
reality
that in
is
itself is a truth, and how do we know that's a truth?
right, exactly. So if you don't have any true north, it's hard to make any decisions. And it's hard to have any guidelines and things. So, but I think inherently built inside of us, we all know. We all know when we're crossing the line. We all know when we're watching something that we shouldn't. You know, I mentioned Cobra Kai. Like when we first started watching it, I remember being like, oh, like there were just a few things I was like, oh wait, we better wait until Adeline's in bed to watch this.
And what was that? Just so we know, because I haven't seen
It was language.
Okay.
Yeah, it was language. And
Is it like
and
major league language, or is it more like heck and darn?
yeah, it's more major league.
Okay.
You know, and it ends up. You know, I think what I love, like the reason I'm drawn to it is because, of course, I grew up in the 80s. So the Karate Kid, the crane kick, you know, that was like, I love the Karate Kid trilogy of movies, you know, and they're bringing back all the old characters and stuff. So it's kind of fun to like dive in or to go back and reminisce. So the storyline's great and it's really entertaining and it's fun.
But they've coarsened it a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely rougher, you know. I mean, just the recently I heard like there was an F-bomb in one of them, and I was like, man, like what? I didn't need that. Like we didn't need that.
Right.
This is a great show without all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Like why does that have to happen? And I have to be honest, like we sit there, like sometimes we'll start to watch these things, and we're sitting there with the remote. Just in case, like, or if a scene comes on that we think is going to be like,
sketchy.
Yeah, a sketchy scene or something, we're fast forwarding through that stuff, and
That stinks, doesn't it?
It stinks. Yeah, I wish we didn't have to do that.
It didn't always used to be that way. Back in like going back, you know, like the previous century when television was new, there was actually a doctrine about TV. And people upheld this by the FCC. They said there is a standard of a sacred trust that we know now we're going into people's homes. And people thought about this like in great detail. They thought, man, if we're going to be beaming entertainment into people's homes, we got to make sure that they can trust us with that entertainment. And so the major networks like NBC, CBS, ABC, they all signed on to this idea of a sacred trust that these shows needed to be edifying. And so that's why, I don't know if you remember like growing up, Different Strokes, Good Times, What's Happening. They all had morals, like the Fonz, you know, like when he jumped the shark. Like he showed he was still cool, even in skis, you know. Like,
Right.
But there was always a moral to a story. What do you think's changed? Like, why has that changed so much?
I'm not sure. I do think one of the things that started to shift content on TV was probably reality TV. I think if I can look back to something that I go, wait, this was a shift. It was maybe some of the talk shows like Springer. We started to find people's mess entertaining. Like it's like that kind of train wreck kind of thing. You watch someone falling apart, and it's like there's this like guilty pleasure or something that you get from it. And it's, I guess it's similar to like, it was like watching a soap opera, but it was real.
Yeah.
Like, well, it was real.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But I think our capacity, we started to degrade with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I do think that changed content.
Yeah.
As we started to watch more stuff like that. It wasn't necessarily smart programming. They didn't have to think through what the humor was going to be. The humor came from shock.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was more, what can I do to completely surprise the person?
No, I totally agree with you. Yeah, it's like shock on the one hand, and then all our dramas now become anti-hero. It's not like the guy wins and he's good. It's the bad guy wins. And wow, there's something interesting about this bad guy. Like,
right, it's intriguing, and it is really interesting. But I do think that shock, and it's like, I mean, I think back when I was in college, and this is one of my favorite stories to tell. And it's totally inappropriate, but
perfect.
But it's
Here we go.
but it's hilarious. So there's this guy Chell. And like our first year together, like
this is at Berkeley.
Yeah, he lived in our dorm. Our first year, he was real quiet and like more subdued. Second year, he became a totally different person. Like,
his name is Chell.
Chell, yeah. So you start to think, like, I guess if I'm thinking Impractical Jokers. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen that show.
Yeah.
Like, just totally, he would do anything.
Oh, wow.
To anybody, anywhere, right? So a guy came onto our floor and he got this guy mad somehow. He said something stupid, and we're just like, listen, it's just Chell. He's an idiot. You don't have, like, it's cool. But this guy was ticked, and he's like, man, you don't talk to someone from New York that way. And Chell's like, I'm from New York, and Chell was from Canada. So it's great. So Chell ends up going, fine, you want to fight? And the guy's like, yeah. Come on, and we're all going, what is going to happen here? What's going
at a music school?
Right. So Chell, I know you wonder where I'm going with this. Chell ends up piece by piece stripping completely naked. Okay.
Why do I not want that image?
Exactly. He's completely naked, and he goes, "Mama taught you never to fight the naked man." Right. And this guy's just like, man, you're an idiot. Bleep, bleep, bleep. He starts swearing, and he just leaves. So Chell totally got out of a fight. That's hilarious, right?
That's ridiculous.
It wouldn't be enough now for me to just tell you that story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Like, and in the past, even the concept of that may have been approached in a TV show.
Yeah. Someone
might approach that. Now you have to see full frontal nudity for it to be funny on TV.
Yeah.
Like, or on a movie. They have to actually go there. It wasn't enough to maybe imply that an inappropriate thing just happened between a guy and a girl. You know, you see them the next morning with the regret or whatever. We have to watch them perform the act. And I don't know where the shift started to happen, where that became okay, but it seems to be more acceptable now.
So isn't that, and again, this is going to be an interesting discussion, but isn't that sin?
I believe it is.
Just to go to the basic, I just want to establish a basic layer.
Yeah.
That's sin. And so I'm looking at James chapter 4, starting in verse 4. And James is no joke. Okay, he just says stuff. Like, James is the kind of guy, he's the half-brother of Jesus, right? It shows in the book of John, James made fun of Jesus. Was like, oh, you're the Messiah. Why don't you go and show everybody, you know? So obviously he got some sense left into him with the resurrection. And so now he's like, oh my gosh, I totally missed out on an opportunity. The Messiah was my brother. We slept in the same bed, and I totally blew it. So now he's like completely 180'd. And he's a different guy, and the stuff he says is just like, oh my gosh, I better listen to this. So in verse 4, he says this. He starts off, you adulterers, you adulterers, don't you realize that friendship with the world makes you an enemy of God? I say it again, if you want to be a friend of the world, you make yourself an enemy of God. Man, I read stuff like that, and I'm like, I get all crusade-y. You know, and I'm like, yes, we will not watch any more of these shows, you know.
Right.
So I think I go back and forth between poles sometimes, because there's part of me that's like, well, no, there's something redemptive about Cobra Kai, or there's something redemptive about these shows. They're showing good versus evil, or whatever it is, and there are lessons we can learn from them. And then I go to the other end of the extreme where it's like, I want nothing to do with that. I don't want that in my home. I don't want anything tainting my children or my house or my energy. You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, and I'll definitely say we kind of waffle a little bit too. Like there's and I have at times probably like kind of given in out of like not wanting to be. Some of it is probably that old because I wasn't allowed to go to movies. Like it was such a hard line, it made those things seem. It was like, wait, no, there's really good things in movies. You know what I mean? Like so I think sometimes it's like, okay, I'll give this a chance, or I'll try this, but we've had to have some tough discussions even as a family. Like I'd maybe give in or start watching something, or partway through we'd shut it off and be like, listen, I'm sorry, this just isn't.
That's a huge moment.
We shouldn't be watching this, or and so we've had some of those moments as a family. We've had times that the kids have rolled their eyes at me, probably thinking that I'm a little prudish. But I also know that the stuff that I've watched over the years, even as a kid, even in my weak moments or whatever, have stayed in my mind. And those things have not helped my marriage. Those things have not helped my relationship with God. Those things have not. So that causes me to go, yeah, that was sin. You know what I mean? Anything that's not improving my life, or my walk with God, probably He doesn't want it in my life. So, I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize now is, and that's something that a 20-year-old doesn't realize, is that when you're 45, that thing that you watched when you were 20, it's not out of your head. You're going to remember that forever.
So what things have you said no to in your house?
Oh, lots of things.
I mean, just give us an example, because I think this is where we want to, the discussion that comes later.
The practical.
Yeah. We want to start with, so what are you talking about?
We haven't watched Game of Thrones. We haven't watched, there was, I'm trying to think of some of the top ones. I never watched Schitt's Creek. I don't know if I wouldn't, because I don't really know. I don't know much about it.
How am I ever going to talk about it?
It's
guys, I watched Schitt's Creek. Like, what are you, crazy?
It's a funny caption. It's playful.
There actually is a place called that, and that's why it's named after that.
Yeah,
apparently,
which is, I see why they did it.
Yeah. So that's just swearing. So we don't want to get too caught up on that, because if you go to Internet Movie Database, which I go to all the time, it's called imdb.com. It's a great little resource. If you want to look up a movie and you want to see if there's any bad things on it, I think Plugged In is another good resource.
I always look up Common Sense.
Common Sense Media is another good one.
Like before we watch a movie, a lot of times, like if I'll see something or I'll see the rating on it, I'll be like, okay, let's pull up Common Sense.
Yep.
And we do that before we watch movies, and I know sometimes it gives away the plot a little bit, but I'm like, oh no, this one has 300
I think it's wise parenting.
S words.
Yeah. And it's not just parent. If you're watching this and you're like 20, I don't think this is just a parenting thing. It's like you're parenting your soul. You know what I mean? Like you got to have a guard over that.
Yeah, I do think so. And everybody has their own limit for these things, and this is where my wife and I would disagree or something. So Caleb will like an action movie, my son Caleb, he'll like something like Fast and Furious. I'm not as drawn to those movies, and sometimes I think they're over the top, with some of that stuff, but I'll watch a Western, and Kim will argue,
you're into the Westerns, man.
I am. I love Westerns. She'll be like, why is it okay for you to watch a Western where they're killing an entire village of people, but you won't watch
this? But it's so different. It's
action scene. Actually, the newer Westerns are a little rough at sometimes, yeah. So even in those, I have to be careful.
You had me, we were doing at the movies, I think it was last year, and I was stuck on a movie, and he's like, why don't you watch this movie? I think it was Grit. You're like, how about Grit? Was it Grit? True Grit?
No, it wouldn't have been.
You did say True Grit. No. Because I went and rented it, and it was like a John Wayne 1968 film or something.
You rented the wrong one then.
Are you serious?
Yes, because there's a newer True Grit.
Oh, I just rented True Grit. And I'm like, Matt Goss
True
likes
Grit
this?
is a classic with John Wayne.
With John Wayne.
But there's a newer one.
Dude, that movie, True Grit, from 1968, you can drive tractor trailers through the lines. He's like, I told you to get out of here. And then it's like 5 minutes later, who are you talking to?
Yes, there's a newer True Grit.
Was that one
Yeah.
you were talking about?
I don't think I sent
I was
you
like,
to
does
True
he
Grit.
really want me to do an at
I
the
told you to
movies
do
on True Grit?
Invincible because that has a lot of redeeming.
I like Invincible.
Qualities.
Yeah, it's a good. Anything with the Eagles is
I think Tombstone would be a great at the movies.
okay. Okay. Well, and anything with the Philadelphia Eagles in it instantly redeems itself.
I agree.
It's just totally good. So we've got other boundaries to watch. I mean, sex.
But there's
violence.
so even I think about violence, like we're talking TV, video games, like that's even something that's in our
Yep.
in our world, in our house, and stuff like that.
What have you had to say no to with that?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely said no to some games like Grand Theft Auto is one that comes to my mind where I'm like, there is nothing redeemable about
Right,
that game
right.
at all. Like you can maybe get some redeeming quality in like a Call of Duty or something like that, where you're like, oh, we're in the army and we're taking out the bad guys, But like, I don't know. I think that doesn't. I don't know if that helps anybody playing games like that, but
totally.
that's just my opinion.
Yeah. What do you think of?
But I've not allowed I've said no to those games.
And are they like, oh, Dad?
Sometimes, yeah.
But they'll understand.
Yeah, Pac-Man's okay. We're allowed to play Pac-Man.
Miss Pac-Man.
And Donkey Kong.
The really fast Miss Pac-Man.
And the old Pitfall.
Oh, good.
I still have my Atari 2600.
How about Frogger?
And every time I pull it out, the kids are like, Dad, this is stupid.
This is so dumb.
Yeah.
Let's say God were the programming director of TV. What shows do you think God would immediately just be like, gone?
TBN.
You gotta explain that.
I'm just kidding.
You gotta explain that. Please explain that, because I don't think people know Turner Broadcasting, right?
Is it Turner or Trinity?
Trinity.
Trinity
Oh,
Broadcasting.
this is even better. Yeah, explain, please.
No, that's just all Chris. I'm kidding. TBN has some good shows.
It does, but it can get a little out
It can
there.
get a little cheesy.
Big hair and stuff like
exactly.
that. So if the church isn't in the business of telling people what they should and shouldn't watch, then how do we develop guidelines? Like, so we're supposed to be like self-policing, and even police is like a bad word for it. But if we're supposed to be like self-accountability, like how do we do that?
Well, I mean, it's clear in Scripture that we're supposed to be transformed by renewing our minds. So I think really as a Christian, you have to, if you're not becoming more like Christ, then you're not growing. If you want to grow, we just have to realize there's consequences for the decisions. Whatever we want to be, whatever we want to become like, do more of that. You know what I mean? Like if you want to become more like the people that you see in the shows that you're watching, watch more of those. If you want to become more like Christ, do more things that draw you closer to Him. And I think, like I said, deep down we know.
So I should watch more Passion and less Tommy Boy.
I do think there's sometimes.
I picked on Tommy Boy because I know he loves.
I love Tommy Boy. Yes, I do love Tommy, and there are some inappropriate things in Tommy Boy for sure. I've even gone back to watch stuff that I watched as a kid.
Oh yeah.
And been really surprised.
Yep.
At some of the content.
You don't remember it.
I didn't remember it.
Maybe that's good.
Like I was like, oh man, I didn't remember all that language in that. Like I think the first movie I saw in the theater as a kid was E.T.
I was just gonna say.
And I remember like when my kids were around that age being like, oh, we have to watch E.T.
Yeah.
And I put it on, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's tons of swearing in this.
I know. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And you're like, what is up with Steven Spielberg? Like,
I didn't remember any of that. The reality is, God speaks oftentimes in a still small voice. But if there's constantly noise,
oh no,
we're not going to hear Him.
Dude, I'm totally with you on that, because I'll see, we'll watch the news or maybe an Eagles game or whatever, and then you'll see these ads for these shows like CSI, and it's like, who wants to come home, unwind and relax to a criminal investigation?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, man, well, this person got attacked and sexually exploited. Like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
Like, why would you fill your mind with that stuff?
Yeah.
So I love what you're saying. I think it serves as a challenge, I think, for groups to really process. It's like, should we not just say, boy, that's a good idea. Maybe this should be a challenge that we take up in our homes. And again, if you don't have a home, you don't have kids or something like that, you've got roommates, you've got fiancés, you've got people that are under your influence wherever you're at. I think we need to take this seriously of a challenge of maybe there's a period of time for a weekend or like you went away for a weekend, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe a few days of where you just like take a break from stuff that is objectionable or anything that kind of is not leading your spirit to a good place, and just see how it improves your walk, and maybe helps you feel better. I don't know. Is that something that would be a good?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, there's nothing better for me than sitting by a fire, putting on a record. Like I have an old record player, and I just like to little peaceful,
Nice.
just sit down, cup of coffee.
What would your record be? What would you put on?
U2, the Joshua Tree.
Really?
James Taylor.
I thought you say Ella Fitzgerald or something.
I do listen to a lot of that era.
Mm-hmm.
Louis
You know what I
Armstrong,
just listened to? One of my favorite jams the last couple of weeks is now I can't think of it, Sir Duke by Stevie Wonder.
Oh yeah.
Dun, 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 dun. I mean, those horns are just like, what?
Yeah, that's good stuff.
I played it for my daughter, and she's like, yeah.
That's the other thing about too, and I know you'll probably edit this out, but like my kids' generation, they don't listen to albums.
Oh, yeah.
They listen.
Songs.
Music's in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really even. Oftentimes, they're not even watching shows. They'll put shows on, but the shows are in the background
While they're on their phone.
while they're on their phone doing
And then
other
they're
things,
playing a game.
or they're talking.
Yeah.
For me, like I actually like to engage in a story,
Yes.
and I want to watch.
I say, put your phones away because I don't want to see the
totally.
light.
And they're always like, oh, do I have to? And I'm like, guys, you can't really watch the movie. And it's gotten so bad too that they talk throughout the movie.
Oh yeah.
And I actually went. It got so bad for me. I kept turning it up so I could hear because I must have a little ADD or something. But I actually went to get my hearing checked.
Really?
Because I thought I was having hearing loss. It turns out my family's just annoying.
Turns out
I was just like annoyed by my family talking while trying to watch the show.
Oh man.
So,
dude, thanks for being here and thanks for walking us through this. This is good. I do think we need to cut it off here and send us to groups and take out your guide and start talking through some of this stuff. And I want you to end on that challenge of, so how are you going to take that next step of creating some distance between yourself and some of this media? And not only that, but then as an ongoing basis, what's in, what's out in terms of what's good for your soul and what's good for your family's soul. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being here today, Matt. And go ahead and enjoy your discussions.